Hey, hi, how are you? My name's Carrie. Thank you for being here. We are doing our final piece of the 2023 wrap up puzzle. Today we are going to be talking about my worst books of 2023. If you have watched my best books list, you know that I kind of struggled this year in terms of finding really great books, like absolutely 5-star instant faves, but I also kind of struggled to find really horrible books. This list definitely filled with books that disappointed me and upset me in a plethora of ways, but they were just sort of difficult to pick out. I can't tell you why some of these made the list and some of the other horrible books I read this year didn't, but I also think a big contributing factor to this is that I have gotten better about DNFing books. I used to be a completionist. I needed to finish the book, and that would usually put me into a reading slump, and I just don't have time to waste anymore. I'm being much harder on books, and if they aren't clicking, usually I'm looking around 30%, and then if I'm feeling shaky, I kind of take note, and then at 50% I will put down a book, which past me would never believe you. So these are books that are bad, but somehow I still pushed through and finished them. So whatever that means. But speaking of me getting better about managing my time and not trying to waste it, I would like to give a shout out to the sponsor of this video, which is listening.com. Listening.com actually takes anything from academic papers, textbooks, PDFs, emails, and turns them into audio files so that you can listen on the go. If you don't have time in your schedule to sit at your desk and flip through your textbook, you can just use the listening.com app to listen to your textbooks while you're doing your groceries or while you're commuting to and from class without having to and the app has all these features like the plus note button, where if you're listening to a sentence and you want to mark it, you just hit the button and they will automatically take that sentence you were listening to and add it to your notes. It also has automatic chapter detection features, so you can kind of jump around to exactly where you want to be, and it pulls any kind of graphs or data tables out so that you can look at it on the app as well while you were listening. I just think it's a really cool app, considering when I was a student, I had an internship and 2 part-time jobs and the full student schedule. And if I had been able to listen to my study material on the hours spent on the D train commuting to work, wow, my GPA might have looked a little bit different. And this includes covering math equations. They are able to skip citations. I highly recommend checking them out. So usually you get 2 weeks of a free trial with listening.com, but with my code, which is in the description box, you can get an extra week free. Definitely check it out, especially as we're diving into the new school year. And I wish you the best of luck. So thank you to listening.com for sponsoring this. But now we're going to talk about the books that actively wasted my time this year. We've got more than a few. Looking at my list, I put these in absolutely no particular order. Let's just dive in. I know this is going to be a mess because I just don't want to talk about these books. But here we are, getting them out of my system, never to look at these again, starting with one of my most recent reads. And normally I would just ignore this book. Normally I wouldn't include a book that was very clearly just not my style, but the details in this book made me so mad that it gets first mention, and that is The Plight Before Christmas. I read this during my Christmas rom-com marathon, which I have not recovered from, in case you're wondering. Thank you. And The Plight Before Christmas, first of all, has the ugliest cover I've ever seen, but there were so many details in this book that just thinking about it, I'm so upset. So the book follows a woman who is in her mid-30s. Things have just been going wrong in her life. She broke her foot recently, I believe. She did not get the promotion that she deserved because her coworker was a man and golfer buddies with the boss. I forget. It was just a string of unfortunate events for this girl. And so she heads to her family's annual Christmas gathering. Her sister and her husband and her kids, and then her brother and his wife and their kids and their parents all converge at the family house or their grandparents' house. She's just ready to relax. It's a little sad because this is the first Christmas without their grandparents, but she's just happy to see the family, drink a lot of alcohol, and that's pretty much it. But she does not get to relax because who walks in the door but her ex-boyfriend from college that they haven't spoken since college. He is now somehow co-workers with her brother, and her brother didn't know their connection, and he just saw that this guy was going to be alone on Christmas, so he invited him. Meanwhile, the guy knew the whole time, and so he came fully knowing that he was crashing his ex-girlfriend's Christmas. And what continues is like them obviously like forced proximity, whatever, like getting back together. But the ex-boyfriend's weird like I knew that it was your house that I was coming to stuff continues throughout the whole book, in which he's like actively eavesdropping on people. That was just like weird, toxic, like, oh, okay, it's a weird romance novel. Like, I didn't even really bat an eye. But of course there's the fact that her biological clock is ticking and she doesn't seem to want kids. And so her sister and her mom have multiple conversations about how sad that is, that she's not interested in children. And like, I hope she'll be happy, but I don't think she will be. And then we get a weird detail of our main girl's niece, who is 9 years old. Stay with me. 9, and every time she's mentioned, we are also told that for some bizarre reason, she is experiencing her first menstrual cycle. This 9-year-old is on her period, and that's all we hear about. And it was never explained. There's no reason for it. It is never brought up in a way that like actually changes the plot. She just happens, just letting you know, hey guys, this 9-year-old is menstruating. What? And then, just cherry on top, it is just trad wife trash, like front to back. The sister is in kind of a rough patch with her husband. Like they don't seem to be on the same page. He seems to be a little distant. And so the advice from our main character is, oh, well, he just needs a blowjob. And also you need to stop making fun of him. Like you need to treat him like a man if you want him to act like a man. There was just so like underlying talk about gender roles and like the role of a woman. It was just so gross. And then at the very end, there's this weird ass tidbit where the boyfriend's name is Eli and the girlfriend's name is Whitney, and the mom noticed that together it means Eli Whitney. And so in order to show that she supported the couple, she used a lot of cotton stuff. If you don't know, Eli Whitney is the inventor of the cotton gin, which every American knows. I don't know why this is a fact that sticks in our brains, but that is something that was drilled into our little heads in all of our history classes. Eli Whitney made the cotton gin. The cotton gin made the American slave system actively so much fucking worse, if it could be worse, for enslaved people. So much fucking worse. Why would you make that a cute thing in your rom-com? Oh, how cute, our main characters, their names together equals a person who made the lives of black people so fucking horrible. Like, it was, I was just speechless. Like, I couldn't even believe. I had just gotten off of a book. I read Wreck the Halls, and the main characters' names were Beat and Melody because it's like a music reference. That book wasn't good either. But like, okay, Beat and Melody, stupid, but whatever. At least it's not Eli Whitney. That book, oh God, that book just made me so mad. And then I found out that like it's not the author's first issue with like racism and weird ass shit in her books. So I went in there unprepared and I came out of it, as you can see, really mad. That was A Plight Before Christmas. Okay. After that, I'm just getting my romances out of the way. I only have 2. The next one doesn't make me mad, but I just thought this book was so stupid. And that is Hello Stranger. I actually read another book by this author called The Bodyguard earlier this year, and it was totally fine. Passed the Cari reads a romance on an airplane test. Totally a good time. Hello Stranger, I just want to know what happened there. Catherine. This is about an artist who she has just entered a really important portrait contest, which will get her out of a kind of financial bind that she's in, and also she just hasn't had any luck in the art world, and so this is really going to put her on the map. But then right before the period of time where she's going to start making her portrait begins, she gets hit by a car, and when she wakes up, she has something called facial blindness, which is an actual thing, but she can basically look at faces and see like, oh yeah, that person has a nose and 2 eyes and a mouth, but they can't see who it is. They wouldn't be able to recognize their best friends, their mothers, which is an issue when you are a portrait artist. Okay. What follows is her basically struggling through this while also having a major crush on the veterinarian of her, is it a cat? Of her animal that she can't see. She just knows the voice. And then she's also struggling with an asshole neighbor that ends up showing up constantly at her door. And she doesn't have time, okay? She's interested in the vet. Get a clue, gross neighbor, right? This book was just, I felt like such a waste of my time because it wasn't funny enough to excuse how stupid everyone was. Like, could she not recognize voices? And like, did other people never tell her? Like, do her friends care about her so little that they wouldn't be like, hey, that guy you keep calling an asshole? Yeah, he's the guy you also have the hots for. Like, that's not even a spoiler because we knew. Like, the dramatic irony is that obviously we know that those two people are the same and she doesn't, but like, it didn't make it like, oh my god, I hope she figures it out. It just made me feel like this is the dumbest girl on the planet. If my friend had facial blindness, I feel like I would have taken care to like help her. But she's just sort of abandoned by her friend until her best friend throws her like a party. I don't know. It was just so weird. And literally the entire plot hangs on the thread of the fact that the word bitch means one thing for humans and one thing for dogs. That's it. So, you know, it wasn't like incredibly problematic, but it was just like I felt bad for everyone in this book because they were all so dumb. That's Hello Stranger. After that, I read a book that I should have DNF'd, and it ended up putting me into a reading slump that was really difficult in October, and that is Sucker. This was pitched as a mixture of Bad Blood, which was Elizabeth Holmes's kind of biography about her crazy startup that failed miserably and now she's in jail. It was pitched as a mixture of that story plus Succession, which I haven't watched but is known to be really excellent. I have so many friends who love that show. So I was like, sure, yeah, let's give this a go. It's like gonna be this creepy thriller about like the medical field, but also startups in Silicon Valley and just like toxicity. Let's go. Our narrator is a piece of trash. Like, he is your typical Silicon Valley tech bro. He's a nepo baby. He's just the worst, but he ends up getting roped into his friend's startup as like the creative director, basically just so that his dad will donate money to the startup, you know? And it's clearly a startup about like something medical. And as we dig into it, the book is called Sucker. There are fangs and blood on the cover. We're supposed to think that it's vampires, and if they had gone hardcore into like the vampirism, I would have been more okay with it. But instead we get like 300 pages of the most toxic narrator, like suffering through being in this man's head for 300 pages, only for it to like not be anything vampire-esque. It's very much more like Illuminati. Like, I didn't even get the vampire payoff. It was very sad and a waste of my time. I find that the books that I pick up that come from lists from like the New York Times or like the Washington Post, like any of those traditional journalism lists of like the top 10 books of the year or whatever, always suck. Like 9 times out of 10, the books are horrible. And this was one of them. I think I got this from the New York Times. Like, best new releases. No thanks. After that, really quickly, I made a whole video on it, but I read The Summer I Turned Pretty, and I went into this thinking that I had kind of enjoyed the show, but not quite enough that I was going to wait until season 3 to figure out like what was happening. I just kind of wanted to skip ahead, know what was going on. So again, I went in without any hate in my heart. I thought I was just going to find out an innocent end to a little YA contemporary romance, and I left it so heated because it was just so poorly written. Like, truly, it was written like, I woke up, I got out of bed, I put on my pink shirt, and then I went down the stairs, and there was cereal on the table, so I ate it. But it was my brother's cereal. My brother was mad. He gets mad a lot. Real mad. Like, I just wrote a whole chapter of The Summer I Turned Pretty. Like, it was, the writing was just really not wonderful. And then the story goes off the rails. It is so bonkers. There is no character growth. And the ending is weird as hell. And also, no one's nice to each other. Like, we're supposed to fall for one brother, but that brother treats her like crap. And then we only get the nice moments of this brother as like flashbacks. I can't even explain. You can watch the video if you want to, but I was shocked by how mad I was. I thought that video was just gonna be me like spilling the tea, like, oh my god, this is what happened. But instead I was enraged. So The Summer I Turned Pretty, all 3 books, specifically the last 2, specifically I think the 3rd book, right. Next up, just because I wanted one hot take in here, because I feel like most people would agree with me, my hot take is, I want to die but I want to eat tteokbokki. I was really surprised by how little I got out of this book, for how much people talk about it, for the fact that there are multiple versions. I think there's now a sequel. This was not groundbreaking in any sense. I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki is just a transcript of this girl's therapy sessions, and her issue is basically just like, she has self-confidence issues and she has like anxiety, and there's a term for it, but basically she's just kind of like a little sad all the time, like a little depressed all the time. And I feel like that's valuable because most people feel that way. I think a lot of people could feel seen by having that be treated as like, yeah, that is an actual like legitimate thing that people struggle with. But it was very like therapy 101, and then she just started to get kind of insufferable. Like, I just didn't like her as a person. Like, the things that she was bringing up, I was like, I don't know, I just, something about it really was not, I didn't like it at all. And so and I feel like extra salty because that was a book that I purchased. So that was I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki, and maybe get it from the library first before you purchase it, like I did. Next up, I feel like this is on the list because it was a bad book in my opinion, but also because I had such high hopes for it, so it had further to fall, and that is Modern Divination. This was described as being academic rivals to lovers, super dark, gothic, just like witches and cottages and all of it. This was the most confusing book I have ever read. I believe it was self-edited, and I think it needed someone else's eyes on it. We follow our 2 main characters who are academic rivals. It turns out that the world is like never built, so I feel like I can't even tell you what it's about because I'm not even sure. Basically, there are witches. I'm not sure if they're like in hiding or illegal or what. Our main girl is a witch, and someone is going around killing witches. And so in order to keep her safe, she jets off to her academic rival's aunt's cottage, and they kind of just live there and allegedly come up with a plan to like stop whoever is killing the witches. They did so little planning that I genuinely forgot that that was part of the plot. Like, I didn't even know, I had no idea what they were doing. I completely forgot what the aim of the book was. The main girl is so rude. I'm okay with like an unlikable female main character, but like they were trying desperately to keep the whole rivals or like enemies to lovers thing going, but really it was just a guy who said sorry and then a girl who was just being like overly rude to this guy who has now gone so fucking far out of his way to help her and is like very clear, like, oh my God, I didn't realize that the thing that I said hurt you that much. I'm really sorry. I'm doing everything I can in my power to protect you and respect you and take care of you. And she is just being so over the top rude about everything. And then I mentioned this in my review of it in my monthly wrap up, but there were so many scenes that just didn't make sense. Like, they'd be having a conversation in the kitchen and the author specifically is like, and he's leaning on the sink. And then like 1 second later, they're in like the attic. Where, how, when? They were just talking and leaning on the counter. There were just these skips. Like, I think she forgot when she was writing, like she forgot that she said that they were in the kitchen. So then she just switched them to the It was so many of those things. There were also like the names. Oh, this drove me up the wall. Everybody had a nickname, but you would either call them like, I actually remember a character's name for once. His name's Teddy, because they would call him like Theodore, I forget his last name, like Theodore Shazinski, but then sometimes he'd be Theodore, but sometimes he'd be Theo, but sometimes he'd be Teddy, but sometimes he'd be Shazinski, and that went for everyone. Like, and even though we've known Teddy for 400 pages of this book, sometimes she would still call him Theodore Shazinski, and I'm like, we don't need his full name. We know his name. We know all of his names. And even like side characters, like there's this guy who owns a bookshop or something. He gets the nickname, the first name and last name, the just last name treatment as well. It was just tiring. I, again, didn't know what we were trying to do half the time. There were just so many scenes that I was just lost because we were just physically jumping around. Whew. Modern divination. Oh, next up, speaking of a book that had far to fall, this was by an author that I really enjoy, Shea Earnshaw. I made a whole dedicated video to it because I was so shaken to my core by this book. And that is A Wilderness of Stars. This, if you want like the full spoiler, you can go watch it. But this book was just, I felt like a first draft, and I'm just so upset that they published it the way that they published it. This is a story about, it seems really interesting, okay? So I'm like, it's about a girl who lives in this unspecified time, but it feels very kind of like old-timey. There's no electricity or whatever. And the world has been ravaged by this disease called consumption. And no, it's not tuberculosis. Yes, I know tuberculosis was called consumption, but this is just consumption because it like consumes you, and I don't want to spoil it, but like it's not tuberculosis, okay? So for whatever reasons we will find out, our girl has been trained to constantly be searching the sky for these two particular stars, and once those stars get above the horizon, she has until they get out of the horizon to complete this task. And so the day that her mother dies of this consumption, she sees the stars and she's like, oh shit, I've got to leave. And she's never left the farm before. So she has to somehow find the astronomer, and like that's gonna save the world. We don't know. Like, again, this is another book where I can't even tell you the plot because it was just so poorly written. I have never read such lifeless characters before. The romance was just gross. It was one of those like girl has never seen another human outside of her family before, and then she falls in love with the first boy that she sees. Okay, you can just watch the whole video because the spoiler is actually wild. If you like science, if you like logic, physics, you're gonna have a good time with this one. The Wilderness of Stars. It was just really, really poorly written, and it was by an author that I like, so it was just such a letdown. A Wilderness of Stars. I'll link it down below. And now for my last book. I was going to put, tentatively, I wrote Three Dark Crowns on here, just because I thought that the book had a lot of potential and it fumbled it so hard. But honestly, there were so many books this year that had a lot of potential and fumbled it really hard. A book in a series that was in my best books of 2022 video could have made the list if I kept that standard up. So I'm taking Three Dark Crowns off. This was truly the year of like fumbling the plot, because a lot of the books that I read this year were continuations of series that I already liked. So Three Dark Crowns, you have been saved today. I'm taking you off the list. Going in for my last book, I think I read 3 of them. Maybe I read 4. It was a blur. I made a whole video about it. It was how I started this year. So I should have known that this was going to be a bad year. The Zodiac Academy. I hesitate to call these books. The amount of spelling mistakes, the amount of subtle racism, the amount of just straight up glorifying sexual assault and rape. It was just all around a horrific time. I joined my friend on her podcast to talk about it. I'll also link that down below. There were parts of it that were hilarious because it was just so bad, but then you would get hit in the face with sexual assault posed as being sexy, and I just couldn't deal. It was so just like a horrific time. This is a book about twins who grow up in Chicago, and then one day someone comes and is like, hey girls, you're actually fairies and you have to come to the Zodiac Academy, and if you graduate you can claim your rightful place as queens of this world. So they go to the Zodiac Academy. There are these 4 boys who are currently the heirs to the throne because the twins went missing into the real world. And the 4 boys just like torture them in every way, shape, and form, but it's okay because they're hot. And I'm not paraphrasing. They literally, one of them is a vampire. The girl says, well, at least if I'm gonna get assaulted by anyone, at least it's a hot guy. It was just really bad. And then there's a character that speaks Spanish really incorrectly. Truly a time in my life that I would love back. That was another video where I went in thinking like, oh, this is just gonna be like a funny bad time, because I had just read Crave and that was bad, but like bad in such a hilarious way, like so funny, I thought. So I thought like, oh, okay, Zodiac Academy, it's also gonna be bad, but like it's gonna be a good time. It was not a good time. Taking the like bully trope way too fucking far. Really gross, truly. So those are my books. I think that I picked books that made me angry more than that they were bad books. These are books that just made me just mad. So there we go. Like I said, I had a lot of DNFs this year, so I happily did not finish a lot of potentially worst books of the year. I'm trying to be a little bit nicer to myself in that sense. So let me know what your worst books of the year were this year. I feel like a lot of us, based on just like the feedback from my monthly videos, a lot of us had kind of a struggle year this year. I have high hopes for this year. I feel like the even number years always serve me better in terms of reading. So here's to 2024. Would love to chat with you down below. Thank you for being on all of these journeys with me. For every one of you who struggled through watching The Summer I Turned Pretty or my Zodiac Academy or my Vampire Academy. What was it? Vampire Diaries? What did I read? All of those videos. Thank you for suffering with me. It would have been difficult to do it alone. So I'm gonna leave you guys here, and that's the end of my yearly wrap up. So now we're on to fresh content. No more looking back. Looking forward into a bright future. Thank you again to listening.com for sponsoring this. All the information will be down below, but you can get a 3-week free trial if you use my code. The link will be down there. Be the mysterious, hot, smart girl listening to a textbook on her commute to work. So yeah, I will catch you guys later. And this year so far, I've read really good books. I'm on like my 4th, maybe 5th book of the year, and so far, so good. So I'm excited to talk to you about a monthly wrap up. I'm excited to talk to you about potentially reading a fan fiction. Good things coming. So see you then. Love you always. Hope you had a great new year, and hope 2024 is treating you well so far. Okay? Bye.